Oh, I may not have clicked on the video thing. Ah, that's what happened. Okay, so see, we didn't even get to see the video. Welcome everybody. It is the Maple Syrup Show, and we are live. Sans video. We have no video this time, which is okay. So, I guess we'll ask Hafiz to sing the song. Go ahead, sing the song, buddy.
Oh, I gotta do this by memory. And then Sen's face.
Yeah, something like that. It's something like that. Well, anyways, welcome everybody to the show. We are here live in Ontario. We're all in Ontario for once. That's a rare thing. Although it's happened more and more lately because Hafiz has been picking the guests, and a lot of the guests are people that we know from just around the design scene. And today we have with us, we have the one, the only, Miss Iorio. And am I pronouncing that correctly? Is it
Yeah,
I
actually,
Oreo or it
Iorio.
Oreo?
Iorio.
Oreo. Okay.
And funnily enough, not the one and only, because prior to hopping on the live stream, we found out there's another educator
True.
with a similar name, and you got the Instagram handle, but she got the Twitter handle. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And it's all the real Miss Iorio.
I'm the real one.
No, you're the real Miss Iorio CA
Yes, that's true.
on Blue Sky. But yes, and she's also an educator, and she teaches like grade 8 ELA. And it's
Maybe.
that's yeah,
Yeah, the
that
other
no
one.
no the other one. So welcome to Christina. How are you?
Me? I'm
Yeah,
good.
you.
I'm
That's
good.
good.
I'm on a school night, so bear with me.
That's okay. School nights. It's okay to be out a little bit later because you're the adult in the room apparently. So there you go.
True.
So welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you? What do you do? Why do we have you here today?
Well, as you mentioned, I'm a high school teacher, or sort of mentioned. I teach here in the GTA, and I teach history. And the reason why I'm here is because in my history class, my students, as a cumulative project, they do an escape game, and they research a decade in Canadian history and put together an escape game as a group. And so I was invited to come and talk about that.
Oh, so it's a group project. That's even better.
Yes.
I love it.
Well, sort of. Yes.
Very cool. Very cool. And you teach up in the York
Yeah. You're
area?
Catholic.
Excellent. And you're teaching mostly history, social sciences, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff?
So it's the department is called Canadian World Studies.
Okay. Cool. And what got you into escape rooms and using them in the classroom in the first place? Were you a big gamer? Do you like escape rooms yourself?
Yeah. So I will say I like games, but I am bad at them.
Okay,
So,
that's okay.
so for example, I am the coach of our trivia team, and I always say that I am terrible at it's reach for the top.
Mhm.
Yes.
You guys would probably know this as Canadian gamers.
Ah,
So I coach reach for the top, but I'm a better host than I am a player. I was never good at reach for the top, even when I was in high school. And so I do that in my high school. So I'm already kind of in the game kind of sphere. And I like going to escape games, even though I always fail miserably at them. Um, and I did start to notice that they involved a lot of history in some of them. In particular, I went to one that had an ancient Egyptian flair to it,
Ooh.
and I started kind of ruminating on that and realizing, this seems like something I could probably do, and that's kind of where it started.
That's awesome. So the inspiration came from your own experiences, from your own interests. Just throwing it out there, no one does an escape room by themselves. So if you haven't completed any, that's not on you. That's on your group mates.
I think it's on me and the group mates.
But the blame is shared. It's not all square on you.
That's true. Oh, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
You just need better partners, really.
That's what, or to cheat better, one of the two. Yeah. But so we're going to talk a little bit about escape rooms. We're going to talk about the really cool thing that you're doing with your students in class. But maybe it'd be a good idea for us to kind of pin down what is an escape room generally, and then what makes it interesting, what makes it something that people are willing to lock themselves into a room for an hour for.
So an escape room is usually a room, but sometimes it can be multiple rooms that are attached. And it requires the players to work collaboratively to solve puzzles, clues, all kinds of mayhem in order to achieve some sort of a goal. So sometimes it's, get out of the prison or escape from the Egyptian curse or whatever, whatever the actual overall theme is. And so you do these different tasks that eventually culminate into you finally achieving that end goal. So if it's, escaping the prison, it's, that's your end goal that you're achieving. And so it's usually something that's very immersive and task driven in it. And you have to work together in order to achieve those goals.
Yeah, oftentimes there's a narrative in there as well too. I find that for a lot of these rooms, they tend to just be a story that's been chopped up into different pieces and rearranged. And so as you're getting it, you're also trying to put the pieces back in order in the right way with a few random red herrings thrown in that could take you down a different path than what the actual story is.
And I always get caught on the red herrings.
Mm.
I hate red herrings, and I pretty much undesigned them from any escape room I built.
The first
Not
time
big on those.
The first time I ever did an escape room, my brother had come to visit me, and there was one that was opened up right next to the school that I was teaching at in Vancouver. And so he came. We're identical twins. We messed with the students, and then when the school day was done, we went to go do an escape room. And he was so impatient that he just started fiddling around with some of the locks, and he managed to open them. So we started doing the escape room out of the order they wanted us to do it. And then we escaped in time. We got out, and we were supposed to tell them what happened. And we found a nail in the escape room, like an acrylic nail that someone would have had. And so we came up with this elaborate story. We pinned down the person who did it, and then they looked at us and were completely silent for a solid 30 seconds. And the two of us are looking at each other like, "Yeah, we did this so good." And they're like, "How did you get to that? That person is dead. That you like, they're also dead." It turns out that because we unlocked one clue, we completely skipped over the main thing, which like told a good chunk of the story. And the fingernail that we found was from someone who did the escape room beforehand, and their nail broke off and fell in, and we 100% thought it was a clue. So we red herringed ourselves.
That takes a special level of.
That's its own skill right there.
It
so
is.
that's
It really
just
is.
yeah. So Christina, don't feel bad about
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So let's talk about like escape rooms and their purpose in the classroom, really, because that's sort of the interest that we're talking about today. Because I mean, most people, everybody, it's the year of our Lord 2026, right? It's like people have played escape rooms, probably, right? If you're a gamer, if you're into puzzles, you probably played an escape room. But many of us have graduated from, kindergarten all the way up to grade 12 and probably college and university. And we never got to do these cool things in the classroom. So, Christina, why did you bring this idea into the classroom? And was this something that you thought of before you saw other teachers doing it? Or did you go to the research and go, oh, look, other people are doing this. I can do this too. And how did you convince, like, your principals that this was a good idea?
Ooh, that's okay. Good questions you have going on. So, I don't really remember the inciting incident that kind of caused it to happen. Usually, like my personality is when it comes to pedagogy, I think I'm somewhat adventurous in that regard, and so I'm always trying to make my lessons a little bit more exciting because sometimes history lends itself very easily to stand in the front of the class lecture, right? And that gets very boring very quickly, not only for me as the educator, but also for the 15-year-old sitting in front of me, right? So I wanted to kind of insert essentially a break in the curriculum throughout the course. And the first is I call it my version 1.0. My first escape game that I created for the kids, it was kind of a chaotic hot mess. I had 6 groups going in 6 different directions around the library, trying to achieve one goal, which was like this multi-lock box that they had to unlock. And things were getting confused and all that kind of stuff, but it all was working towards reviewing the 1920s and 30s. And 1920s and 30s, I think it was. And then the final clue led you to the next unit, which would be World War II. And that's kind of what I was doing that first time. But it was so chaotic that and I had so many kind of critical errors within the game itself that I had to kind of revisit what I was doing and simplify it a little bit more. And thankfully, we had I don't even know where they came from. I can't remember now, but we invited some guest speakers in who talked about how to create an escape game, and so they taught not only me but the students what like the key components of an escape game were. So there was like they talked about 5 key components. So then what I did was I recreated a new escape game that included these 5 key components in it. And then that way the students knew what those 5 components were so that when they created their own, they knew like what to look out for, what to put in their own games. And I could talk more about that as well after. But in terms of getting administration on it, they have been always supportive, like just constantly willing to support my, financially, socially, amplifying it in social media, this kind of thing. They've always been willing to support it. And I remember one specific incident. I was looking, so I wanted to win a grant, basically, like just to give an example to shout out an administrator. I wanted to win a grant, and I think you needed to tell your principal, is I think how it went. And I had wanted to win these, they're called Sphero bolts. They're like little robotic balls, is what I was aiming for. And I went and I asked on this Facebook group about STEM teachers, and they said, forget the Sphero bolts. Instead, go for these things. They're called hummingbird kits. Go for this hummingbird kit if you're going to get a grant. If you're going to get X amount of dollars from this grant, do this thing. And I thought, oh, okay. So I asked the administrator, and she had said, if you don't win the grant, come talk to me. We'll buy it for you. I didn't win the grant, and she bought them for me. And from that point forward, as the program has grown, the quantity of these kits has grown. And that is from multiple administrators funding it and making sure that we had the supplies that we needed. So that also allowed for it. So the support has, like I always say, if you are looking to infuse STEM into your social sciences or humanities courses, if you ask an administrator to fund a STEM thing for that, they will always support you in that. So if you're talking about robotics and putting that in history, they will be on board with it. There's very little hesitation with that regard for it.
Which is great too, because you're also now getting students to explore history in an escape room, but not just history, because I think a lot of times history is taught in silos. And so for them to incorporate technology, engineering, I know it's now smart art has been included in there as well too. And so I think that leads to a bit more of a richer experience and more for the students to draw on as well too when they're coming up with ideas. Now you shifted from being the one that led the escape room to having the students lead the escape room. How did that shift take place?
I still do both because you can't, like, so I know you said earlier on that most people have played an escape game, or have some experience. 15-year-olds have not played an
Oh
escape
no,
game.
not I'm talking adult, like gamers, people who
Yeah.
watch our show, right?
Yeah. So like 15-year-olds have not played an escape game, or the vast majority of them have not. And so they have to experience an escape game. So the version 2.0 that I created, it acts as kind of the introduction to what an escape game is in the system that we have. So the space that we're using, the library at school, it's my version was at a table, so it didn't actually move from the table. And all of the pieces of the game were essentially in like an envelope. And so they have to, like, they'll see, like, what are all these different components within it. And I also use it to showcase the mistakes that I have in that game. So I say, you guys kind of cheated it. You found a loophole that was accidentally put in there that I didn't intend on. And this shows you that you have to look out for those loopholes and close those loopholes in your own game. And so that's kind of ended up with the original escape game that I had created. I started realizing I could make them do this as well. That they could be doing it with the technology that we had at the time. So at the time, we just had a 3D printer in the library. So we started using the 3D printer as part of their escape game. And then over time, the capacity of that grew and grew and grew. And so now it's the thing that, you saw the other day, which is this big monster of an event. Whereas before it was like one box I got from Dollarama and a 3D model that they printed in the library on rotation.
Yeah. you start to incorporate technology, and it sounds like you had a few things. You mentioned the 3D printer, but generally, when students are creating things in the classroom, there tends to be limited resources that they're working with, which is kind of interesting because that can lead to a lot of creativity. And so, how do you set students up for this? And how do you get them to think about creating a game that's very tactile, really, using things like cardboard and maps and other like glow in the dark pens and things like that?
Some of it comes from themselves. Like, I'm not even introducing that kind of stuff to them. But you do build, so as the teacher, you have to kind of build these opportunities for collaborative work ahead of time. You can't just spring it on them in, March and say, you're going to work together as a group, create an escape game, enjoy, right? You have to start that from day one. So from day one, they've been working in a group and, doing different group things. So just brainstorming or whatever the case might be is. So then when it comes time for this escape game, they're brainstorming their ideas. And you also want to be thoughtful about how you organize your groups. So the teacher has to direct who's in which group. So you can't just say, go sit wherever you want with your, and what's going to happen is they're going to gravitate to their friends, right? And you're going to have power struggles in that way. You're going to have too much differentiation in terms of ability. And whereas if you, the teacher, kind of separate abilities out, then you can ensure greater success. And so you'll always have that leader in the group. Like each group has a leader, right? Each group will have a follower. And then, all those people kind of, the people in between kind of fill in the gaps. And then they work together to put their brainstorming, and talents into this project. Now, in terms of how are they coming up with these, without, let's say they didn't have a 3D printer, they didn't have the robots or whatever, they are coming up with the ideas themselves. I think some of them, like the pen, that's probably something they had as a kid, right? Or some trick that they learned along the way from their magic kit or something. I think these things just come out of their own experiences and they bring them in. And I think it also helps that they've researched the topic like the decade in advance. So they're already thinking about what is a key event that they want to focus in on. Like the 1970s, the October Crisis is always like a fan favorite for the kids. And then of course they have the Cold War for the 1950s, right? So like there's the key moments that tend to reappear because they're a good thing to create something around. But they are always coming up with something unusual that surprises me in that regard.
You mentioned that when you were doing the escape room, the escape the Egyptian tomb, that's kind of what sparked you thinking about how can I bring this into the classroom. Are you finding when students are in the research phase, they are pulling inspiration from those events, like perhaps Cold War, they learn about a certain kind of code or cipher. So then just like, hey, our game should have like, are they taking inspiration from real things and gamifying them for their escape room?
Sometimes. So sometimes yes, sometimes no. And I think so as a teacher, I provide them with the framework to brainstorm on, right? So I have like we call it a graphic organizer. So we give them a graphic organizer that says, okay, outline all of these key important events that you've researched. So the student who looked at the 1980s might talk about Terry Fox, right? So they have Terry Fox on this on their graphic organizer. But another kid may not have looked at Terry Fox. They may have looked at something else entirely, right? And then they come together and they have to figure out, okay, what would make for a good concept that we're going to put together, and each one thinks about it differently. So they don't always consider like I learned about ciphers in the Cold War. Sometimes you do, like you have that student that's really into Soviet history, right? But that's 1 out of 30 that might be like that.
Hmm.
Some are doing ciphers because on that long road trip up north, they, had a puzzle book and they were doing it. So sometimes that falls into it. But I like in that state game that I do with them, I also introduce what like a cipher for them. So that also kind of helps them realize, oh, that's what that kind of puzzle is. But they come up with their own versions of puzzles on their own.
Hmm. And so, what other resources are you helping them either find or experience or guiding them towards in that regard?
When you say resources, are you talking about like source material? Are you talking about like physical things to use in the game?
All the above. All the
Okay.
above.
So I try. This is the hard part for a teacher. Is we like to always have the answer and suggest like, oh, why don't you do your thing on Terry Fox? And that he lost his shoe. Go find his shoe as your theme. You I've learned with time that I got to keep my mouth closed. So I, even though I'm thinking about that and I think, oh, that's a good idea. You should focus on Terry Fox, let's say. It's their project. It's their game. They have to have the ownership. So my job is to just sit back, listen, hear what they're throwing around, and if they get a little off track, kind of just reorient them back in the location. So if I see that they're, sometimes they get a little like they might get culturally unresponsive, right? Like, so they might be doing something that's not appropriate, or they might be becoming too imaginative with their historical figure. So I always say, like, if someone has historically died, like in the October crisis, Pierre Laporte dies, you can't bring them back to life, right? Like that's you, they're changing the course of history. So you have to keep these big moments in history still remaining the same. So I'm kind of just mediating that aspect of it and letting them figure out the pitfalls and pratfalls of their game. And I always say that if the game fails, that's okay, because they're learning from it. They want it to be successful for sure, but the joy in the process comes from failing along the way and learning how to recover from that failure.
Yes. That's a great design thing. Fail faster, fail forward, right?
Yeah.
So in regards to things like the 3D printing, are you teaching them that aspect, or do they have to go to like the resource librarian or something like that? How does that access to all that technology happen at the school level?
So initially, like in the early days, the school librarian, I would set a day aside and she would teach them how to 3D model essentially. And
Mhm.
then when I started going so many times, every semester or what have you, I started picking up on it myself, right? So now I know how to, the 3D model or what have you. So then it became that I would put it in so their unit one project included a 3D design element that then scaffolded the skill set. So when they got to this project, they already had learned, they had done it and used it in an evaluative process already. We're at the point now that in Ontario, technology is a required course now. And so the vast majority at this point in time, if not all, are taking a grade 9 tech class. And in grade 9 tech, they've already learned how to 3D model. So I'm now segueing out of teaching the 3D modeling because that skill set is already there, and just kind of scaffolding on the skills that they already have. So they already know how to code. They learned that in elementary school, but it's just me providing them with that opportunity to use that in class. There's I'm gonna butcher this, but there's a Winston Churchill quote where it's like, "Give us the tools and we will finish the job." Right? So it's like, I will provide you with the tools. Now go do the thing. Right? And that's kind of how I always see my responsibility in the classroom.
That's great.
Do you find the students appreciate the merging of analog with some of the digital? Like they're creating things with the mini computers, they're creating things with 3D printing. But a lot of what they're also doing is they're using pen and paper. They're creating things that look aged. They're relying on primary sources. And so, how have you found that balance between analog and with the technological piece?
So in the setup of the game, they have to allocate jobs. Now, again, with time and like how the project has evolved over time, uh, some groups don't need the job allocation. Some groups need it, but they're in the job allocation. There's a group coordinator. There's a clue creator, and then there's a technology advisor. So the clue creator is creating the analog clues, and it's sometimes the version and the analog version to merge into one, and they become a little bit, blended, which I'm okay with. But it's just the nature of the beast. But the analog people, it's just they come up with their own stuff, their own ideas as they're going through it.
Let's take a step back because you had mentioned the 5 key components of escape games. I would love for you to tell the audience what are the 5 key components of escape games that your students are actually adhering to.
I hope I can remember these. Okay. So I didn't review them before I came, so I'm going to do my best here. So word clues, math clues, uh, cipher. Oh no. It's going to come to me later. Now I can't think of it. Cipher, clue. Oh, there's 2 I'm missing. See, now I can't think of it. I'll have to see if I can remember. I remember 3 of
Well,
them.
we're not going to let you escape this
I know.
podcast until
Yeah, that is
you
the final challenge
you
right
need
there.
the next 2. So word, math, cipher,
I'm gonna pull
and
up. I'm
then we
gonna
have
see if
2
I can
more.
find
We'll
it.
figure out what those are as we go along. That's fine. You
I
can call a lifeline if you wish.
I know. I'm gonna try and see if I can get it in my files. That's how. Like I should have reviewed this before I came. You can ask me another question while I'm trying to pull this up.
Um, you
Oh yeah,
said
yeah,
this
yeah.
has been evolving
Go
over
ahead.
time. Oh, sorry, go for it, son.
No. You go. You have a question. I have another one.
I was just gonna say this has been evolving over time. What have been some of your big learnings that you try to make sure that you're one passing on to the students, but then 2 that you're keeping in mind in thinking around how to develop an escape room?
Ooh, I think I'm just keeping in mind that that you have to keep it simple. That's really
Mm,
the biggest thing. I mentioned like math clues, right? They will mess up the most basic math question, and they want to give them like I don't know calculus, right? And the reality is that everyone will always overcomplicate
mm,
the clue, right? And I can give you an example, like the one clue that I have in my own escape game is they have to piece together how many seats there was in the parliament or the legislature during Nellie McClung's time frame. And I give them like the little chart of the seats in the legislature, so they count that up. It's pretty straightforward, and then they have to subtract it from a year, and then they get an answer, right? So that's a very easy mathematical problem. Like one double digit number minus another double digit number gives you a double digit number. And then the from there they go down and they just have to subtract, I think it's like 2 from it. It's like so like basic, but they cannot figure out that answer. They are using letters, like they take, they go A is 1, B is 2, and they start like going, okay, well it must be 25, and they start over complicating what was really just the most simplistic math problem.
That's B E. Oh,
Yeah.
B, to be or not to be. Oh, we're doing
Yeah.
Shakespeare.
Exactly. Yeah. So like it totally gets like derailed. And so it's just you have to keep it simple. And that's what I've come to discover is that they will always overcomplicate it and that they have to keep it simple. And I
Hmm.
do have my 5 now for you. So it was words, math, cipher, logic, and puzzles. Those are the 5.
What's the difference between all of these and puzzles?
Okay, so the puzzles are like I always say that it's usually an image or a series of images that contain something in it, so it leads them to the answer. So the students sometimes interpret the puzzle as like a physical puzzle that they put
Yep.
an image on, right? My game has photographs, and in the photographs, it gives you a clue towards something else. So it's kind of using what's in front of you to piece together to get your answer.
Right. And then logic is
The thing that's right in front of you, but you're ignoring it.
mm.
So in my the one that I hopefully my future students don't watch this because they'll get the answer to this clue. But in my escape game that I created, it's about the purpose of it is Nellie McClung has lost her ballot, and you
right.
have to rescue the ballot. And it starts off with me, like a video of me, but I'm dressed as Nellie McClung, and I'm holding a book, and it's Anne of Green Gables. Okay, and part of Nellie McClung's lore is that she published a novel the same year that Lucy Maud Montgomery published Anne of Green Gables. But we don't know Nellie McClung for being an author. We know Lucy Maud Montgomery for being an author, right? But they both published very popular novels at the time. And so I'm holding Anne of Green Gables, this book, and the camera angle kind of zooms in on it and, comes out. And I tell this whole like saga about, in this script essentially about, this, I published this novel at the same time as this other famous author from Prince Edward Island. Figure out who this author is. You literally have the book in my hands, right? And they have no idea who I'm talking about, right? And so they have to kind of figure out that the answer was right in front of them, right? So
Right,
that's
right, right. I think the human brain has this propensity to like totally like blow things out of proportion when you say, "Oh, it's a puzzle game," right? And they're like, "Oh, this must be complex," and it's really not necessarily complex. It's
yeah,
just interwoven into things. That is like just human nature, I think. And you're right. I think you know I've designed a bunch of escape games and box type things for different publishers, and invariably we make things like 10% too difficult
mhm,
every time. And the co-designer Jay and I were like, but it's so easy. And then we just have to remember that we already know the answer.
yeah,
And we're the ones that designed it. So it's like it's got to be easy because we did it. But when you put all of it together holistically, as opposed to like one little problem by itself, and then under the stress of time and communication between group members, it can become difficult, right? I actually find escape rooms harder as a team than I do doing it by myself. Like by myself, I can solve like most escape rooms, but when you get other people involved and they start leading you down a different path, you go, "Oh yeah, I think you're right," and now they were
yeah,
totally wrong, and I shouldn't have listened to them, but I
Mhm.
did, and now we're like 15 minutes behind because we got down this wrong path. And this is not to say that I'm amazing at escape rooms. It's just that is human brain
yeah.
at work, right? We just sometimes get caught up in the social nature of the game, which is what it's there for. And that's entirely fun too, right? So
Yeah, which I mean, there's a whole class of games that are like that. Something like Code Words, right, where
yeah.
you are trying to get other people to think the way that you're thinking, your wavelength, and then invariably you give a very obvious clue in code names, and they work their way completely around it and somehow manage to get hit by the assassin or pick someone else's thing. And so it's kind of interesting that the thing that makes a fun game and a wrinkle in, say, a social game is something you have to try and iron out, perhaps in an escape room. Or is there the possibility that you could actually lean into certain expectations and use it to your advantage?
Yeah, I mean, um, for me, like I include in these games, uh, difficult things. So I included in my game animation. I included in my game, live action video, essentially, right? And the goal, like as a teacher, I'm trying to show them if I can do animation, this old head over here, you can do animation, right?
I
So
think you're the youngest one on the show today, so thank you for that comment earlier. Also, to link back to another comment, we are quite popular with the 13 to 18 demographics. So your future students 100% know the answers to your escape room.
Ah, don't tell anybody though. But yeah, so I just
We are
try to like
not.
encourage them to build on
Yeah.
Sorry, we interrupted. Keep
Yeah.
going. We were just
No, I was
laughing.
just saying, I just
So
want them to
as
have
a
like,
yeah,
go ahead, Sen.
cool. Um, yes, as a fellow educator, I would love to know, how are you grading all of this? Is there a
Okay, good
rubric? Are
question.
we doing this over multiple
Okay,
iterations?
so this is the magic question that everyone that's a teacher wants to know. I do not mark the games. What I'm marking, in fact, is their reflection post game, and I call it a check-in vlog, but essentially a check-in process halfway through the way. My personal philosophy, and this comes from me as a precocious teenager who often had to do all of the group work for her social loafing group members. I do not like to do group marks. I don't like, they're not pedagogically sound. We're not supposed to do that. And I don't allow that to happen in my classroom. You are getting individual marks. But if you're doing an escape game, you're working together, right? So I can't evaluate the game itself. I'm evaluating their reflective practice after the fact. So they have to tell, that's what they're working on actually this week, is they have to tell me, uh, like I asked them questions that essentially link back to the curriculum. So how have you put history in your game? What's a career in history that your job in this game can be linked back to? And so these these elements allow them to be reflective about those pitfalls that we talked about before in that game making process, so that they can, learn from that. But that's what I'm essentially evaluating. I'm at no point evaluating the game itself, which then comes the second question that I get from a lot of educators is, but then how do they feel motivated to even do the game, right?
Because it's a game.
Yeah, like, and they do sort of like, most of them realize that they're not being evaluated. There's always this population that thinks they are, but they are motivated because they see it as fun. And so the motivation is the fun in it, right? And trying to like do these different things, like winning, like they win awards, right? So like winning the award or impressing the judges, or being, getting their game played to its full capacity, like getting the players to get to the end of the game, like that. Those are enough of a goal for them that they don't really care about the fact that they're not being marked on it.
I love it.
Yeah, and I feel like novelty plays a pretty big role in that too. You mentioned beforehand, it can be so easy just to go up and lecture to the students about a period in history, but now they get to think about a puzzly way to get someone to put themselves in the shoes of a prime minister or a historical figure or a big key event. That's so much more interesting than anything that I ever went through when I was in high school history classes. And so I feel like that also probably plays a big role in it.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, it definitely gets them invested in it, and they remember the historical events a lot better.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a loaded question. Coming from post-secondary education, speaking to somebody who's teaching in secondary school right now, what do you allow in terms of AI usage in development of this project?
So this semester was the first time that I allowed for them to use AI for it. Previously, I didn't consider it, and then I thought, well, okay, let me roll back a little bit. So initially, I had the groups had to do a 360-degree virtual space, and then the app that they were using went defunct, which is always the problem with technology, is that
Yeah.
it is always either becoming paid for or dying. So both are not helpful to me. So I had to kind of pivot to something new. And since AI is, on the tip of everyone's tongues, I thought, you know what, let me give them an opportunity to put AI in it. I had some students doing it on their own volition last year, or last semester. I can't remember now. It all becomes a blur. But they did some sort of a virtual task using AI, and I realized, okay, so maybe they could potentially do this, and I left it open for them to decide how difficult do they want to make it. So some students can do it very simply, so they could do an image, and I think that's pretty simple to create, right? Like you can create an image in AI, and then that could be part of your clue. I'm okay with that. But it seemed that what was popular for since this was the first time, what seemed to be popular was the chatbot. That was seemed to be, a couple of groups seem to have done that. And my understanding is that it's actually pretty difficult to do from their accounts. They say that it's actually takes a lot of work and a lot of effort to create that chatbot. So that's interesting to me to see that they have that skill set somewhere. I'm not sure where they learned it. Is it in tech or just individually they've learned it along the way? But that is an interesting kind of inclusion of it. And we do see in museums, historical museums, the use of a variation of a chatbot being used. So like the one that comes to mind is a museum, I think in Europe, had Holocaust survivors record their entire story, and people can go and ask this video of this Holocaust survivor a question, and the Holocaust survivor answers it. But it's effectively, it's not like a true AI bot, obviously, like it's a real person that has recorded these things, but it's responding in real time to this person's question, which is ultimately what a chatbot is doing, right? So it's that technology is somewhat overlapping here, and I think that's an interesting kind of concept, especially in the historical field.
I had the chance to actually be a judge for the students this year. And one of the things I was impressed with most was one of the groups used the chatbot and trained it on the personal correspondences of a prime minister. So that way, when you were writing back and forth with it, it didn't feel like you were typing to a soulless computer. it felt like you were talking to a person, and it drew on their experiences. I believe it was John Diefenbaker, and I personally, yeah, I love him as a prime minister because he has all these great stories about him. He kept a list of people who wronged him, which I just think is hilarious.
A book
But
of grudges.
yeah, exactly. Him and Kennedy had a few interesting interactions, but I thought that that was such a clever way to get them to really learn about a person and what made them tick, and then how to incorporate that into their own game as well. And you're right; these are things that are being done in professional institutions. There's another museum out in Europe. I'm blanking where. I want to say it's in the Netherlands, where you get to learn about objects by flirting with them. Um, and so, yeah, you go and there's like a screen, and then you just have a conversation back and forth with this object. Um, I do not know if the it's meant for you to seduce it, but they did theme it as like a very like come meet your match when you come and like talk to these things, and it's just a fun, different way to interact with an object or person or historical document that is so different from asking them to sit down, open their textbook, and read something that's there.
And to circle
Mhm.
back to your question about like inserting myself as a teacher in the game building, that particular instance that you were mentioning, that the chatbot of Diefenbaker is a good example of that. The student in the process work actually asked me to try out the chatbot, so I was asking it stuff about Diefenbaker. So I knew, probably, a little bit more than the student about, Diefenbaker's lifetime. And so I was kind of trying to trick it and see what would happen. And the chatbot was coming back a little bit repetitive. Like it wasn't giving anything to the trick questions I was asking essentially about Diefenbaker. And so I suggested to the student, I'm like, why don't you look at, his personality quirks? Because, like one of the things was that he really passionately loved his wife, right? So like, you could include that kind of stuff. And that, I think that kind of like gave him the little light bulb. And then he went back and started deep diving even more into Diefenbaker and started adding those character traits into the overall bot itself.
And that's a level of connection that you're not going to get if you ask someone to write a paper
Hmm.
on someone else. They can do that, but to really get into the person's mind, because you now have to have them responding as though they're the ones responding, I think is really, really clever. Speaking of clever, you've been doing this for a few years now. It's been evolving over time. What have been some of the cleverest or the coolest things that you've seen students create?
I'm always surprised, to be honest. Like every year, there's something that kind of like surprises me, quite, takes me off guard, essentially. Um, I've seen like last year, the reason why we have the Showstopper Award, right? And the reason why that Showstopper Award got created was because of this particular one that I'm going to tell you about. This group, it was only 4 students. They created out of cardboard and I think it was like carpet trim or something, a replica um, arcade machine for Pac-Man. So they had like, if you can imagine like an arcade machine for Pac-Man, it was like, I would say probably 2 feet by, a foot and a half in terms of width and height. And then they had the robot rotated the screen. So it had an error message and then it rotated so that it brought up a new message if you hit a particular kind of code. They 3D printed the handle, the joystick for it. And it was just incredible to see that this thing in person. That one sticks out. I've had ones like that same year a student 3D printed the Avro arrow, but created like a analog clue that had 2 halves of the Avro arrow, but then created a lock that kept them together. So you had to unlock the lock in order for the Avro to open up and have the clue on the inside. So that one was pretty creative as well. You mentioned the X-ray machine earlier on.
We
Uh,
talked about that, I think, before we were
oh, okay,
recording.
sorry.
Yeah. So essentially, one of the students out of cardboard created what looked like an x ray machine with a drawing of a person laying on the flatbed. And when you turned it on, there was an invisible ink pen on the inside that turned on, and it illuminated the inside of the person, which was the coolest and most thematic thing I think I have ever seen in a classroom escape room. And I'm not going to lie, I used to make classroom escape rooms for my classes. I would 100% steal this idea. And I'm wondering, have you had students do something and you're like, oh, that was good. I'm incorporating that in the one that I'm going to run with them next year.
Yeah, I don't know if I have the physical capabilities to do something like that. But that one was like, because he had a whole, like, I don't know if you got a chance to see the guts of it, because there was a whole like levee system on the inside of it, or a pulley system, and so like it was like he was tinkering on that thing for a long time, and it was a teamwork effort. Like him and another classmate were really troubleshooting it and trying to figure out the pulley system of it to get it, the weights of it to go up. So that one was really interesting. I liked the one as well that had the Canadarm, that they had to fish for the satellites. That was kind of interesting. I hadn't seen that one before. That kind of concept.
They also use magnets in that one.
Yes, yeah, they use magnets to attach to get it to go together. Yeah, there's just been. I had one that used the concept of an operation game. Like the man with the bow and stuff, and it buzzes. But what they did, it was for the first heart transplant. So they had it was a take on the operation game essentially, and then they had the heart, like a heart, a lungs, and I want to say it was kidneys, and you had to get them out with the tweezers, and if you hit the side, the robot itself buzzed, and they were just using the robots that we had given them, like the robotic equipment that we gave them. So that one I thought was an interesting concept to showcase a historical moment.
That is really, really cool. Can I ask you, how big are the classes? What are the group sizes, and how long do they have to do this project?
So the class sizes vary. For example, this semester, my biggest class for history was 28. The smallest was 21. So it really depends on like the allocation of the courses. There's no real.
So 20 to 30 on average?
Yeah, so I would say 25 to 30 would be the average on it. The 21 is probably an unusually smaller size. They started in the beginning of April, so they did they do the research at just before March break. So that's them like researching the topics. They investigate the decade that they've been assigned, and they look at the decade from a particular viewpoint. So one person is responsible for equality. One person is responsible for Indigenous rights. One person is responsible for U.S.-Canada relations. And then they kind of zero in on that and research that focus. And then once that research is done, that's when I toss them into the game building process. Group sizes, 4 to 5 is like the magic number. 4 is slightly too small. 5 is the perfect number, it seems. 4, you'd have to have kind of a good, strong 4 group, because there's a lot of heavy lifting that they have to do. The 5 is the magic number of where it is. 6 is just too many.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about the different roles that students get assigned to? You said, somebody might be the clue creator, somebody might be the other thing. So what kind of roles are they, and what do they entail?
So there's a group coordinator. The group coordinator, I say, is the person that they should select, the person who's the most organized. So this is the person who can manage a calendar, can fill in any gaps where if a student is away, they're going to insert themselves to kind of help where help is needed. Essentially, they're just the jack of all trades in the group. But most importantly, they're the person who's going to keep everyone on task. So just making sure that everyone is keeping up with things. I also task them with photographing as they go along, because they use that photograph in a slideshow that they then can incorporate into their check-in vlog to say, this is what we've been doing all along. And as an added bonus, if they're using it for a portfolio, they have photo evidence of their process work. Then there's the technology advisor. That person is usually someone who is adept at technology. So they're the person who knows how to code. They're the person who or is willing to learn how to code. They're the person who can do a 3D model pretty fluidly. So that's usually someone that's interested in the technology aspect or has a skill in that. And then the clue coordinator is usually the person who doesn't want to build the group coordinator and doesn't feel comfortable with the technology. They kind of land in the clue creator category.
Okay, and so you might have multiple people doing the same roles ish because you have 5 people.
Yeah, I usually say maximum 2 for the technology and the clue creator, because you don't want to have 4 people doing technology and
Right,
then
of
no one
course.
doing clue, right? So it kind of keeps things simple. But again, like I said, um, the lines can be blurred slightly.
Hmm.
So if they feel that they can get by and sharing the responsibilities, because often what was happening is I had kids reflecting and saying, I really wish I had done the technology because I feel like I could have done a good job. Or I
Mhm.
wish I could have done the clue curator because I could have done a good job. And so I thought, you know what? If you want to blur those lines, go for it. But if you
Yeah,
need a job title, do the job titles.
yeah, and if you're wondering who is responsible for something, it's the person who has that title is more responsible than
Mhm.
the people who aren't. No, that's great because it does give a lot of I think it gives a lot of grounding and guidance to the individual student, but gives people that flexibility to dabble in something that they may not be the best at, but they want to
Mhm.
try and see if they're okay at it, right? And also, are you suggesting that there's only one taskmaster? There's only one coordinator
Yeah,
usually?
I think it's easier if you have one taskmaster.
I think
But
so too.
sometimes like they might like I think on like one or two occasions I've had ones where they're like, can we just have two together? I think because like they both feel like they can share the responsibility. But that's very rare. Usually they're
Mhm.
fighting to not be the group coordinator.
Yeah, you mentioned each group tends to have one leader, and that's why you kind of make the groups over there. Is that the one that tends to be the coordinator?
Not always, not always. Sometimes it surprises me.
Mhm. And
Okay.
how do you know their strengths and limitations so well by like you're talking April?
Yeah, that's where that Nellie McClung escape game comes in handy.
Ah,
So I use it as my testing platform. So I have them play that game. If they are absolutely miserable at working together to solve the clues, then that group immediately gets disbanded.
Hmm.
And but if I see a group is very successful at working together, I will either take out the ones that aren't necessarily gelling, or I might leave that whole group intact because they work so effectively together. So I use that escape game as a launching pad for relationships that I see.
that's fascinating. So do you get them to play that, or how many copies of it do you have that you can play it with the whole class, or does each group get to play it
Each
like
group,
separately?
yeah, each group has their own copy of it.
I see, I see.
Yeah, so there's well, it's the same version, but it's
Yeah,
six
yeah. 6
copies of it.
copies.
Yeah.
And then how do you observe them playing, or do they report back to you, or
Yep,
do you videotape
I'm
it? How do you
I'm
know that
circulating the
their
class.
group dynamics are like?
Yeah, so I'm circulating the
Oh,
class
okay,
or the
so they're
library,
all
wherever we're playing
simultaneously
it.
doing this within a class period. Got it.
Yes. Yeah, so I'm hearing my
That's
voice
awesome.
in, like, like, amplified around me because all the videos are with my voice on it. So it's very,
In
like,
period dress
alarming.
also, right?
Yeah, like, well, one of the like, the first video, the mission video is me in costume. So I'll get the, like, "Wait, is that you? No, it's my twin. What do you think it's supposed to be?"
What do you
Um,
think this is? Who
uh
else is gonna do this?
Yeah, and then the rest are animation videos, but it's still my voice in the background, right? But so they just they get an envelope that's got some primary sources. So unfortunately, so McLean's magazine had an amazing archive online that we bought the rights to use
Yeah.
as research. Then I think they got bought out, like the whoever was their archivist got bought out, and it became absolutely impossible to use this archive. Like you
Oh,
cannot access anything.
I think
But
you're
when it was,
breaking Hafiz's heart.
yeah,
I know, I'm
slightly.
sorry. It's hey, if you got insider contacts,
I
they
will
tell
look
you.
into that tomorrow. I'm going to talk to our librarian to see
Yeah,
if he's got a hookup or something.
because like if I typed in Nellie McClung does not return any things from the McLean's where it used to. But what I had done was when it was actually usable, is I pulled out like there was images, like articles or like just like things that I could use in the game.
Mhm.
And so I put these things like there was an advertisement for Nellie McClung appearing to like I think she was reading her novel or something at an event, and this was in the McLean's magazine as an advertisement. So I included that in the game, right? So this gives them like a little bit of primary source exposure as well, right? And it, as well as including these kind of manufactured clues that I've put in.
Mhm.
Right.
Do you find they gravitate more towards the things that are real because they're real?
The students or me?
I mean, both.
Me, I want to include the primary sources because when are they really going to be exposed to these historical sources in everyday life? But the for them, I think they are frustrated by the primary sources.
Mm.
Because I put it, and speaking of red herrings, I put in a red herring in there that was that advertisement I just mentioned. It has serves zero purpose to this.
Just cool. You
It
wanted
just
to include
sits
it in there.
there, and they're reading that article trying to find the answer to the thing, even though it has absolutely nothing to help them.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, so go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking, you've had the chance to essentially play test your escape room with students over the years, but your students, when they run it, they're doing it for the term. And so, what does that look like? Are they playing with one another in class? Do they just test it amongst themselves? So, what does it look like for them to get to that final product?
Okay, so they have a series of due dates essentially. So the first kind of benchmark is they're going to be play tested by the local elementary school.
Mm.
So we have an elementary school that's very close by that they can just walk over. So those kids walk on over to our school and they play a couple of their clues. They don't actually have enough time to get through the whole game,
Mhm.
but they test some of their clues and then they rotate to another game. And I always say, like, if you didn't get through, let's say you have 6 clues and you got through only 3, then do the back end 3 in the next round, right? As opposed to having the student who did clues 1, 2, and 3, having their clues being played twice, but 4, 5, and 6 got nothing. Spread out that wealth a little bit. So these grade 7s or 8s are test playing their game, and they see that sometimes their clues are too difficult. They see that there might be a loophole. Like the chatbot student that we were talking about earlier, the grade 7s tried to cheat the chatbot to try and get the answer, but he had created a block. I'm not sure how this works, but he created some sort of a block that prevented them from being able to cheat it, which is something that he inserted into it to prevent that from occurring.
Mm.
But right away, those students had tried to do that. So had he not had the cheat in there or the block, that would have been a learning opportunity for him to see like, oh, it can be cheated. I have to fix this loophole. And then the next benchmark is the judges that I've started inviting. So like yourself, you came to see them. So I invite local museums. I just kind of decided to put out some feelers to see if people wanted to come from our local museums, and they were so excited and so on board, and they came like immediately. It was so amazing to see that relationship starting to build, and so then they came, and so the kids got to see real life historians, and I think that was really important for them because I think in their minds, a historian is an old man sitting on a brown couch,
Yeah, with elbow patches.
probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, like with the little pads on his blazer elbow. And here
Tweed.
they're saying, like, young people, as historians are coming to them, right? And I think it just changes the perception of what it means to be a historian by seeing these people in real life. And so that became kind of the second benchmark. And then the final thing, which is what we did this past Monday, is they played each other's games. So the 50s group played the 60s and 70s, and then the 60s group played the 70s and 80s, and like on and on. And then they provide that group with feedback. So they have to fill out a feedback form saying, what went well, what was a stumbling block, give a high five, this kind of thing, so that they could see as part of the reflective practice what actually worked well for us.
Very cool.
That is so super cool. And how many hours of class time do you have dedicated to the research and the making of this game? What do you think?
The research is the easier part of things, because they're self-directed. They can do it on their own time. I mean, maybe one period, so 175-minute period in class, they might be working on it, but some of it is like at home. That's the easiest part. The building and such, I think it's about 8 periods over the course of like April, end of March, April, that I put in. So I think that's kind of in and around that amount. Uh, you have to give them the time to start, which can take a lot, just to get them going. That takes time. So that's like a period or 2 periods in and of itself. And then from there, once they start getting in motion, it scales pretty quickly. And some of them will meet on their own time, in local libraries or what have you, and even do more things independently.
Okay, that's very, very cool. I'm just wondering because in order to translate this to like higher education, which is a funny misnomer, but we get like 15 classes. Our classes tend to be 2 hours or 3 hour blocks, so we have a lot of time, but we also have a lot of content to cover within that. So I'm wondering
Mhm.
how we can do the same or similar things at the college or university level without losing the content time. So it may work in like a hybrid or flipped class. We'll have to see. Because
Yeah.
I'm very interested in doing getting them to do the making. We've done like escape rooms in classes. Teach in a program where it's like where we do like medical stuff. So we've done escape rooms where they have to do the dosage calculation for a drug that they're administering and things like that. But I've never thought about them creating their own until Hafiz said, "Hey, we're gonna have this person on." It's you, by the way, and her students make their own escape rooms, and it's like, oh, that's awesome. Let's think about this. And so that's why I'm so interested in like drilling you with questions, Christina, is because like I would like to adopt this pedagogy into my own classroom. I have my own devices, my own thought
I
processes.
think the trick is to definitely model it first. Like I think
Yeah.
that's really where it starts from, because they see so in the game that I create, the Nellie McClung game, I made sure it had those 5 characteristics. So the game itself had that. And then I go and I review, okay, did you notice that this was a logic puzzle? Did you notice that this was, a math puzzle, right? And then I also confess like where I messed up too, right? Like here's where there was a mistake in the game that you guys exploited, right? That I didn't intend on being there. So by having that, it opened the conversation for them to better work with each other. Because I often hear them say like, "Oh, you know how like she did in her game, she had da 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 da, da like whatever in the game.
Right.
We should do something like that, but we could do this instead, right?" And
Mhm.
so it starts as this kind of landing point for them that they can improve upon.
Yeah, it's an exemplar, right? Like,
Yeah,
everybody
Yeah.
works best with a model.
yeah,
So
Yeah, and I think escape rooms work so well in the classroom as well too, because it lets you apply these critical, or in the history class, historical thinking skills. Like you're working together as a group, there's communication that's taking place, you're collecting information, you're drawing on prior knowledge, you're analyzing, you're synthesizing, you're trying to come up with what you think this is meant to be. And so it's it's really engaging, which I think is one of the big draws for actually taking part in one, whether it's an
mhm.
educational escape room or just an escape room in general. You are activating so many things, and then you feel the feeling that you have at the end. If you can escape an escape room or solve a difficult puzzle, you just feel good about yourself by the end of it.
hmm
Yeah.
they're definitely
I'm
high fiving each other. That's for sure.
mhm. And that's the thing that I love seeing students, like, so happy and invested in their own success. Like, it's not just the mark that they get, it's, like, the satisfaction of completion of a thing well done, right? A job well done. I may start with, like, choose your adventure books and then move into escape. We'll see.
Mm.
We'll see how much I can
That was
actually
one thing I did.
get, the students to.
I had them do
Sorry, say
that
that
during
again?
COVID. During COVID, when we were
Mhm.
virtual, I couldn't do the escape game like
Right.
it had been intended to do, right? So I had them do essentially a choose your own adventure, but using slides. So in
Yes.
Google
Yeah.
Slides, they had to kind of create the game in that format, but they worked together to do that. So that's another kind of angle that can be done too.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Twine can help you with that as well.
Yeah, I think Twine would just blow my students' brains. Whereas Google Slides or even like Google Forms, like doing a
Yep.
form where you click and it can go to the next form, would be easier for them to manage, I think.
Yeah, and it works
Uh,
well because you can word lock things. They have to solve it correctly before it unlocks the next part of the form for them to keep moving forwards.
yeah, Yeah, so I'm gonna think about that one. I don't make too many changes to curricula. We have like set vocational learning objectives in every course, and you can't go outside of them. So it's different. So I have to make sure that I'm following all of that as well as making it fun.
Hmm.
So it's a little bit of a constraint there, but so we've gone through the five key components. We've talked about the student created escapes rooms. Is there anything else that we'd like to talk about? Because we're over an hour now, everybody. This has been fun.
Well, I think the next thing ties into how we normally end off, which is final advice. So, if you were to give
Yeah.
advice to someone who's either interested in creating their own escape room or maybe doing something for the classroom to create an escape room, you've been doing it for a few years now. As you mentioned, you've learned some things along the way. What would your advice be for someone who is now inspired, like Sen is, to move forwards with something like this themselves?
I always say be fearless. I think sometimes as teachers, we tend to be hesitant about the things that we don't understand. I don't fully understand coding. I don't fully understand 3D modeling. I don't fully understand animation. But you know what? I provided you with the tools, right? So and the reality is the students will figure it out on their own. They will Google it, they will YouTube it, they will ask their friend across the classroom how to do it. They will get supports on their own. And I've learned along the way, like troubleshooting kind of things, but it's because of that fearlessness and that willingness to, like, you know what, yes, I don't understand coding, but they do.
Mm.
So I'm going to let them do the coding and we'll learn along the way, right? And they totally, are fine with that. And I don't need to teach them coding. I'm not the coding teacher, I'm the history teacher, right? But I've provided them with those supplies. So I always say be fearless, be willing to go outside of your comfort zone, and to just try something new. It might blow up in your face, but that's okay. You learn from it, right? And then you change along the way. And we can't, as educators, get stuck in what the way that we were taught growing up, because that's not how they're learning now, right? And if we're willing to be fearless, we can grow with them. I think is my best advice in doing that. If you're looking to build an escape game for your class, be willing to accept the fact that that first iteration may fail, right? That's where that fearlessness comes in. Like, I put a truckload of work into that first escape game. I photoshopped myself into pictures with Diefenbaker and Pearson. Like, I had a green screen. I did so much labor for it. And now that game does not exist. Video exists. So now I use that video as an example of a mission video for my lesson on escape game, right? So
Hmm.
you have to be willing to, like, yes, that was a lot of labor, but it was a labor that taught me something. So you move forward.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right, everybody. We're going to wrap it up here. It was lovely having you on the show, Christina. If people would like to chat with me a little bit more, you can reach me at Senfeng Lim on the Sky of Blue. Where are you, Hafiz?
I'm mainly just on Instagram, so that's at Printer Ink Games. And
And you can
Christina,
go.
oh,
Oh,
yeah.
wait. You can
Oh,
actually. There's something important that's happening right now.
oh, I get a plug? Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, why
Yeah,
not?
so anyone interested, I have a Kickstarter that's currently live right now. It's a two-player basketball game, and it's very light deck builder. The box turns into the basketball net, so it's a fun little 15-minute game. So if you're into basketball or just want to give me money, the Kickstarter is currently live, so you can check that out. It's called Nothing But Net.
And it's fully funded, so it's like a no risk proposition.
Oh yes, yeah, it's getting delivered regardless.
There you go. And you can chat to both of us at Meeple Syrup on all the things. And if you are looking for Christina has a YouTube channel. What do you have on your YouTube channel?
On my YouTube channel, I kind of go through teaching strategies, essentially. So if you're an educator and you're looking for some interesting ways to teach different things, I have posted some outlandish ideas that I've done in my classroom, and I share some of that on my YouTube channel, That Canadian Teacher. I'm a little not too frequent on it, but there is a body of evidence there. So
And then on Instagram, you are the real
yes, the real
Miss.
Iorio. And I will tell you, since I've talked a lot about my Nellie McClung game, it is available through my Instagram bio link for any teachers that are out there that want to use it in their classrooms. It is free. If you,
That is awesome.
with the caveat that you have to then DM me afterwards and tell me how it went. That's the only cost.
That's a fair trade. That is great. That beats the heck out of teachers pay
That's
teachers.
totally a fair trade.
Yeah.
Right.
And I have
Although
lots of
teachers pay
teaching
teachers is
resources for
fine too,
teachers.
but awesome.
Not when you can get it for free
you
from
want
me,
help keep the
apparently.
lights on, right? If you'd like to help keep the lights on, you can go to patreon.com/maple syrup. And what's happening next week? What's happening next week?
Well,
Hafiz?
we're going to figure out what's going on because you might be out of town, and that will give me some time to line up some awesome people like Christina that we can talk to when you are back, possibly.
Well, so this war in the Middle East is messing up my travel plans. Not because I was planning on travel to the Middle East, but I was planning on using a whole lot of gas driving across Canada, our wonderful country. And I don't know if that's going to happen anymore unless I decide to go shop for more or something. You never know, that could happen. So we'll see. We'll see if I actually go on my trip that I had thought I was going on. But right now, it doesn't look too great that we're going super far. We might still travel, but just maybe not as far as I'd planned. So we'll see. I'll get back to you on that one.
Yeah, sounds
Cool.
good. So for anyone
anyways,
watching,
next
TBD.
week. Yeah, TBD. So
TBD?
next week we might see you here. We'll announce it. Yeah, we'll announce that. And Christina, it was super nice meeting you. We'll see you soon. And you know what? If you need judges next year, reach out. Maybe I'll be available. I don't know. It'd be fun. I'd love to see students
Don't tempt
in
me.
grade 12 doing
And
stuff.
Sen is
No,
fantastic at
seriously.
these kinds of things.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was super awesome having you here. All right, everybody. We'll see you later. Bye.